And judges, if you could please introduce yourselves.
Good morning, everyone. I am Jay Barth. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and a retired professor of American politics at Hendrix College.
Hey, my name is Thomas Mackey. I'm in the History Department at the University of Louisville and with the law school here at University of Louisville.
I'm Rita McCannon. I'm an attorney in Huntsville, Alabama.
We're thrilled that you're here, and we'd love for you to introduce yourselves.
Good morning. My name is Kate Smith, and I'm a junior at Staples High School in Westport, Connecticut.
I'm Talia Perkins, and I'm also a junior at Staples.
Hi, I'm Eli Herman. I'm a senior at Staples. And this is our teacher, Suzanne Kammerman.
Hi, welcome. I'm going to get us started with question in Unit 3, Question 2. Quote, "There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other," close quote. What issues led to the formation of the original parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? And finally, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? Take it away.
Debate over federal power led to the formation of the original political parties. The Federalists, led by Hamilton, argued that the vigor of government is essential to secure liberty, and that federal power to regulate states extended beyond enumerated powers under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. The Republicans, led by Jefferson, feared this energetic use of national power, claiming that tyrannical actions could be justified as necessary and proper, and that the disposition to abuse power would operate in federal legislature to lessen state authority.
Another dispute was the economic direction of the nation. To establish the scope of national power and bolster commercial economy, Hamilton proposed assumption of states' debts and formation of a national bank. Jefferson and his followers denounced this plan for its enshrinement of the economic elite, as it favored merchants, bankers, and speculators, and instead proposed an agrarian society of human farmers.
The Napoleonic Wars between Britain and France also mobilized Americans on opposite sides. Although President Washington declared neutrality, Hamiltonians wanted to support Britain, arguing for economic benefits, and Jeffersonians insisted on allying with France, who had provided support during the Revolution.
As the political climate has transformed, these original issues have not persisted in American political parties. A pertinent issue today is racial and ethnic equality. During the 2020 election, 76% of Biden supporters versus 26% of Trump supporters cited racial equality as very important to their vote. With advanced racial equity as a cornerstone of President Biden's 2021 stimulus plan, Democrats employ an anti-racist agenda. 87% of Republicans prefer the phrase "all lives matter," dismissing conversations about race. During the formation of original parties, issues of race were avoided. While Jefferson wrote "all men are created equal" in the Declaration of Independence, he was referring to white male property owners rather than minority groups.
Regarding healthcare, Pew Research indicates that 87% of Democrats support Medicare for all. Similar programs like Obama's Affordable Care Act aim to improve healthcare in the private sector, but received disapproval from 60% of Republicans who fear economic ramifications. During the formation of original parties, healthcare was non-existent as it only emerged in the 1920s.
Gun rights also create controversy as Democrats encourage an end to the epidemic of gun violence in their 2020 platform, while the Republican platform emphasizes preservation of the Second Amendment. According to Harvard professor Jill Lepore, despite today's interpretation of the Second Amendment's individual right to bear arms, the understanding during early America was the preservation of a well-regulated militia. After Revolution, states saw rifles as safeguarding their sovereignty. Now, guns are a method of mass murder. These debates result from continual political developments, rather than persisting founding issues.
Divided government is advantageous in its deliberative lawmaking process. President Reagan's 1986 tax reform and President Clinton's 1996 welfare reform were products of divided government. Because the reforms stemmed from ideological compromises, they appealed to middle America rather than just red or blue America, thus sustaining far into future administrations.
But the benefits of divided government become debatable as America enters extreme political ostracization, mainly propelled by media. According to UVA Miller Center fellow Stephen Gillen, Those in power use procedural tactics to obstruct the opposition and prevent compromise. The result is political gridlock. With the decline of moderates in both parties, cooperation is rare and divided government becomes disadvantageous.
According to Robert Dahl, wise as the framers were, they were necessarily limited by their profound ignorance. Issues of the original parties have not persisted because the framers could not predict future developments, including hyperpartisanship through media. Cooperation is necessary to protect the founders' vision from partisan encroachments. Thank you. We are now ready for questioning.
Very well done, and thanks for your timeliness in that. Tom, you want to take over?
Oh, sure. Happy to jump in. Always am. This is one of those big questions in the American polity from certainly the 18th century to the present of how do we deal with and channel strong personalities and strong opinions on the issues of the day into appropriate public policies. How do we channel these issues into institutions that aren't even mentioned in the Constitution, like either political factions or political parties? So that the question kind of leads you to a negative. My question is, what is the advantages to political parties? How do they help issues come forward, get debated or resolved, or not? But want you to at least consider that there's some positives to political party formation.
Political parties help to, yes, bring groups of people together with common interests instead of interests being divided all over the place. And one method to kind of channel political parties positively is called the contact hypothesis method, which means that gather people so that they in a positive environment so that they understand the opposing view and can debate well. And one civic way to achieve this is called citizen assemblies. It would have citizen representatives coming together and debating political and social issues. Actually, in Ireland in 2016, this method was used and was cited as one of the ways that climate change was addressed and combated, and some of the policy was developed from these discussions. So that is a way to do it.
Although Congress, I think, receives kind of low approval ratings, often due to their lack of action or the slow process, our two-party system actually does have some benefits. In Belgium, in their 2010 elections, there were 10 parties elected into the Chamber of Representatives, and none of them had more than 20% of the seats. Because of this, it took 540 days of negotiations to form a governing coalition. And that doesn't really happen in the United States. Although, yes, our two-party system can lead to extreme polarization, there are some benefits of it.
While I do see there are benefits, I think the disadvantages of political parties outweigh the benefits. And one way you can see this is third-party candidates having really no impact or representation in our government. For example, Gary Johnson, who was the Libertarian candidate during the 2016 election, he had his name on the ballot in all 50 states, and in the District of Columbia, he only amassed less than 4% of the popular vote. And Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, had her ballot in 45 states and the District of Columbia, but only received 1% of the popular vote. And this kind of shows that even if these third-party candidates are receiving 1/3 of electoral votes, then the vote decision comes down to Congress, which is divided between two parties. So I think that it's really disadvantageous because third-party candidates have no chance of having representation in our government.
Read it.
Do you think that having the party identification, having almost everyone that wants to be involved in politics in any way, having to identify with a party, does that frustrate? Does that frustrate democracy? Would we do better if we didn't have a situation where we had parties that you had needed to identify with to become active in politics, or is it inevitable that we have party identification?
I think one way to combat this would be through proportional representation. So right now, single member districts are the main way for people to get elected. And for example, in the 1996 House of Representatives election, 66% of votes were for Democrats in Massachusetts, but they gained all 10 seats in the House, which kind of shows that even though they didn't gain the total vote, they were still getting all the representation in the government. And with a proportional government, these minority groups, or like I said, third-party candidates would only need to get 10 to 20% of the popular vote, and they would still get their candidate elected. And this could be achieved locally, but it's also been there's also been efforts for the House. So, for example, in states like North Carolina and Georgia, all they would need to do is repeal a federal law from 1967 that requires single-member district elections for the House. And by repealing this, we could see a more like a multi-party system in the House of Representatives.
I would argue that while the two-party system is not mentioned explicitly in the Constitution, it is sort of outlined if you look at Article 2 in the Electoral College, and then the 12th Amendment, which specifies the election of the president and vice president. I think because of our plurality voting and kind of these implications in the Constitution, our first past the post system has developed, and so I think that it's kind of disadvantageous to ally yourself with a third-party candidate, because with our electoral college and everything, there's going to be two major candidates, and this is indicated in the Constitution and how it's played out.
This two-party system is actually also explained in Duverger's law, which is essentially a political theory that states that democracies with single-member legislative districts and winner-take-all voting tend to favor a two-party system, and that's because many voters don't want to waste their ballot, so they more so gravitate toward a legislative candidate that they think actually does have a chance to win. And in that sense, I would agree with Talia that it's because of the layout of our voting process that we have this two-party system. So yeah.
So y'all have articulated some of the challenges with our current two-party system. You've also just articulated some of the barriers to meaningful engagement with additional parties. So as current and future political and social change agents, where should you spend your energy to create change?
Working with political parties or working in interest groups?
Or some other force?
Or some other NGO?
I think that maybe a switch to nonpartisan elections could create less of a political divide. In this way, people vote based solely on ideology and kind of avoid voting along party lines. And a Pew Research study found that 53% of Trump voters and 46% of Clinton voters were actually casting their vote against the other candidate rather than for their own candidate in the 2016 election. So nonpartisan voting, I think, would avoid these political divides and have voters focus more on ideology and what they truly believe in rather than these two political extremes.
I would argue that it's important to maintain factions inside of the parties, like different groups within inside of them. I think that an issue today is that
You can go ahead and finish.
You can finish.
An issue today is that an argument today is that the Republican Party is becoming a faction. If you saw the insurrection of the Capitol, those were more radical groups, but even moderates, 147 Republican lawmakers still decided not to certify Biden's election, and they allied with these more radical factions within it, and the party is becoming a faction altogether. So I think those separations need to be maintained.
Great, thank you all. Calm, relax. Good job, we'll give you a few feedback. I think y'all clearly were incredibly well prepared. I thought you worked together as a team very well in the Q&A. You really kind of didn't step on each other very much, and I know that's hard in a Zoom world to not do that, to have that kind of sense of communication and respect for one another. So I appreciate that enormously. I'll turn it over to others. I may have other things to say in just a second.
Yeah, I thought I thought you did a really nice job. And Where another follow-up of mine would have gone is you set up the 1780s, 1790s period, and then said there's no continuity to the present. When in fact, I'm a historian. I worry about change and continuity. I think there is some continuity, and we still, in a very rough kind of way, still think about loose and strict constructionists and how that gets reflected into the political parties of all kinds, both the two major and then the others. Now, that little quibble aside, I thought you did a really nice job. You knew your material. You did a good job of explaining it and taking a position and defend it. I like this a great deal. Thanks.
I think what I like the most about the material that you knew is that one of you took one area and explained it to us, and the other one of you said, well, while we're at it, I don't agree with that at all. I'm going with this. The disadvantages, we asked you a question about the advantages, and Eli was just right on it. Yeah, but this is how this is. And I thought that was just outstanding. I appreciated how you all knew background to articulate your answers relative to what you were being asked. And that was even in areas that you didn't even know were going to come up. So just really, really proud for you and your teacher. Y'all have really prepared for us. And I got to tell you something, this is hard stuff. This is what they call in one of my favorite movies, advanced citizenship. If you can ever figure this out, you may help the whole country. So I'm going to say this because I won't get to say it another time, but when I have watched the finals in the past, one of the judges says it every year, and it used to drive me crazy until I realized this is the first time she's ever said it to that particular group. I'm the only one that hears it every year. But she asks the students to look around them at Congress, at the buildings, at the places they're sitting. You guys could be there. And you're not very far away, but I'm not talking about proximity. I'm talking about your opportunities. Don't let all this go, because you're so articulate and you're so smart. And I think you've got an opportunity to help our country. So just think about that going forward.
Yeah, thanks for your thoughtfulness, and thanks for doing this in a really challenging time.
Yeah, nicely done, guys.
Thank you.
Breathe again. It's okay.